So if you're obsessive about anything, it can be unhealthy. But if you're obsessive about your job, that will equal usually success. And I would put it down to my mental health OCD, addictive behavior that I have. And I have been and still am very obsessive about my job. Self-belief from a very, very early age. From a little kid, I've outworked everybody I've ever been with. And for a heavyweight, that takes a lot of doing. A process of all these things coming together and then it merging and just put it all into practice, put it into play on a daily basis. High performance to me is high octane, full energy, full attack, victory, and everything that comes with it. That's what high performance is to me. And I have found that I have actually found a very comfortable seat in my most uncomfortable areas. But I've managed to do that from experience and practice.
And we're professional athletes, we're professional businessmen. We understand the risks and the rewards.
No retreat and no surrender. And just keep going and pushing yourself. I can find solace in the hardest, toughest, darkest places. And if you can do that, if you can run at the level of finding a comfortable position in your most uncomfortable circumstances, that's where you're going to be successful. And you know, I test myself a lot, all the time. I'm always testing the Gypsy King. Tyson Fury the man will test the Gypsy King. The first book I wrote was called Behind the Mask. So the way I have sort of structured my life in able to cope with stuff, like I have two very different lives. Like I have Tyson Fury, who I was born and named, who is a husband, a father, a son, a mental health patient, a very flawed character, very flawed, very normal, fat, bald, lazy at times. And then I have the Gypsy King, who has never ever suffered with any problems, who has never had any complications in his life, who is just mental concrete.
It doesn't get any bigger than this. This is it.
So in around about 2013, 14, I got lost in between these two characters. I couldn't live different lives. It was just one life rolled into one. A long time of doing the same thing and being so super confident. Tyson Fury and Gypsy King got entangled and I couldn't tell them apart. And I knew that that was very unhealthy. I had to get back to being myself. Like I say, these characters have always been separate and then all of a sudden emerged. Even at home, even behind the scenes, anything, I just couldn't define the two men. It was very, very hard for me, and it was almost like I was lost in a movie script and I couldn't get out of it. I just couldn't snap out of character. I had to be this big, brash, confident, outspoken, controversial figure all the time. Like, I'm thinking, like, this is not me, really. And I knew if I was ever going to have a happy life, I had to get back to being the person I was in the beginning and try and separate these two things. And it was pretty difficult. But I believe it had to happen to me. This had to happen in order for me to get through to the other side and be who I am today. At one point in my career, there was always the expectation of, oh, don't worry about anything, because Tyson's going to come and he's going to publicise everything and the show's going to be run on his back. I was just like one of those little circus monkeys that you wind up and he's going to go to work and everything's going to be fine. There was just no filter. There was no switch off. There was no being me and being not me. Mm-hmm. I was this performer and I was going to live up to it.
I'm contractually obliged to do a certain amount of stuff. And if I don't do it, guess what? I've breached contract. And I don't want to breach because I don't want a court case because they're all the shit and I can't stand them. And it just drags on. So I ain't breaching anything. And I had millions of pounds, millions of dollars in lawyers' fees to pay on ongoing battle in court cases. So I do it. Press conferences, pre-fight stuff, interviews, whatever I have to do, I do it. Because it says it on a contract that I signed.
You know, you just get on with it. I took that responsibility on, and it was almost like a manifestation over time, until it got to the point where I couldn't be myself anymore. I didn't know what was me and what wasn't. I didn't know how I was before. Until I obviously had the mental breakdown. To try and live at that pace for such a long time is very unhealthy. There's always massive lows afterwards, like big depressions and anxiety and everything after these big events. With every big high, there's always an even bigger low for me. The higher the highs, the lower the lows will always be for me. Most of the times I have suicidal thoughts, which is kind of crazy even to sit here and admit today. But I've figured out how to manage this over time. So what I like to do now is, I know it's coming after these big events, I'm going to be down, but I know from experience now that this is going to move in a few days, a week. I always say to Paris, like, after these fights, just let me have a bit of space, try not give me too much tasks to do, and I'll be back in a week. I'll be back to normal in a week or so. And what I like to do is, I like to get myself straight back to grassroots straight away. To get myself straight back to normal stuff, like back Monday morning, dropping the kids off, and it brings me back to normal being who I am and who I have to be. A provider, a carer, that sort of person. And I knew I couldn't do it on my own. I just knew it. I couldn't do it. I'd said so many times I was going to do it and believed I was going to do it in the night. And the next day come, I didn't have no motivation to do it. And I was drinking every day, something I'd never done in my life.
Wow.
To try and wash me sorrows away. And drinking 4 or 5 drinks every night. Because that'd help me go straight to sleep, no problem. The odds of me overcoming all them obstacles, never mind the weight and the mental health, is like 0. It's not possible. The first thing that I would say to anybody is, after experiencing all these things, like, you can't do it on your own. But the sooner I realised that I couldn't do it on my own, the sooner I got back well again. I come from a big, tough family of all fighters, and nobody shows emotion, or everyone just like keeps everything to themselves. I know what it's like not to have anybody to speak to about anything. And I know what it's like to be almost ashamed of saying, like, I'm severely unwell here and I need help. Because needing help for me has been, it's almost like, I don't need help from anything. I'm Tyson Fury. I fight my way out of anything. And I think admitting to yourself that you've got a problem, whether you've got an alcohol problem,
drug problem or whatever problem you may have, acceptance is the key. The sooner you go and do that, the sooner you figure shit out like that, then the sooner you can get back to what is normal for you. But if I don't accept that I've got a problem that needs working out, then I'll be in denial forever. But the sooner I can come to grips and admit to myself that I've got a problem, I can start to recover from it. And my advice to anyone suffering with any sort of mental health or any sort of issue is get straight to seek medical advice immediately. I've been suffering with these mental health problems from being a little boy, small enough to hide in a wardrobe and be anxious inside a dark wardrobe. 5 years old, 6 years old, all the way through my life I'd had this down one day, up the next, up and down, up and down, up and down. Anxious, but didn't know what it was. I didn't understand it. I had no education on mental health, and up until a few years ago, it was all hush-hush under the carpet stuff.
Hell of a journey. I've had a hell of a ride the last 20 years. I've got the man with me who started me, Steve Egan. He's in my corner. And he said to me, you know what? He said, I'm the only person of all these people here who knew you before. 20 years. Now that's loyalty, innit? And I'm happy. I'm contented with who I am. I'm contented with what I've done. I've made a few quid. I've won all the belts. I've done more than I ever wanted to. I've ticked off all the boxes. And I even get an extra added bonus. I'm just doing my job, doing what I'm getting paid to do, and enjoying it. And that's it. I'm alive and well and kicking. Very, very healthy and very in shape. Very ready to rock and roll, throw down.